It is my pleasure and honor today to introduce today's speaker, Tom Baker. Tom Baker has spoken many, many times here, and he always brings with him a story that makes us laugh, a story we can learn from. That's why I call Tom one of our great teachers here at the Fellowship of the Inner Light. Tom is ordained here in our church. He was a Catholic priest where he left the priesthood, eventually became a counselor where he is in practice and still helps many people. And I'd like to give a round of applause and a big welcome, Tom Baker. Thank you.
Well, I just made it around all the detours, so here I am. Well, over the holidays, I had RSV, and so I was so sick that all I could do was watch television. Well, watching television for 3 weeks did little to heal me, but it gave me a lot of insights into our culture. First, the news is almost uniformly bad, and the world is extremely dangerous. I mean extremely. A large percentage of the American public is armed, including children. Many of us are packing heat ourselves. Some of you are armed, I'm sure. It's kind of scary. Most of the population is sick, especially with eczema and psoriasis. I don't know what it is about those two, but boy, we've got that bad. And the medications offered for a wide range of ailments usually have toxic side effects, including death. The entertainments portray a world in which the good narrowly defeat evil. Politicians blame each other for the bad in the world. Athletes brag about themselves, and it is imperative that everyone be a winner. Checkered flag is where winners buy. So you can take that to the bank. Better not. Losers sort of disappear. We seldom see the poor among us. We see it everywhere else in the world, but we don't see our own poor. They're sort of disappeared. And we don't see the dying, except in war-torn countries. And we're told in a myriad of ways that money is the most important thing in the world, and God is almost never mentioned except in expletives. Oh God and Jesus. You feel like in Jesus' time, people said, Jesus, Jesus. Well, if you were to diagnose the average American person from the perspective of TV, you would have a patient who is bipolar, or what used to be called manic depressive disorder. Everything is always up and down and in extremes. My goodness. Talk about extremes. This is vodka. Or something like it. It's good. Well, now even the water is in extremes. My gosh. People are either happy or really unhappy. And they are sick much of the time, have terrible allergies, and most people either have suicidal tendency, or homicidal tendencies. It is awful. But what stood out for me for most of the time was that there was never a voice of reassurance. On all of television, there's never a voice that says, you know, it's going to be okay. We'll make it because of the people we are in the presence of the God who created us. All is well. You don't hear that. You say all is not well. All is very, very dangerous. You have a lot to be afraid of all the time. You don't hear all is well or all is in divine order, or as Jesus put it, I am with you always, even unto the end of time. There's no reassurance. That's sort of passed out of the culture. As a child of the 50s, I asked, where have all the flowers gone? Where are the Walter Cronkites, the Mr. Rogers, the Andys of Mayberry? I remember when Andy would reassure Barney that there was no crime wave in Mayberry, that Aunt Bee was baking pies and Opie was riding his bike home from school. All was well. Andy would give Barney his bullet with the reassurance that he would probably never need it. Now that was a world I could rest in. We perceive our world, at least from a televised perspective, as restless, angry, and edgy. Yet the world, now hear this very, very carefully. The world is not something imposed upon us. We are not the victims of the world, for the world is a blank canvas on which we paint how we believe and feel and think and want. In other words, the world is up to us. We make the world up. So what happens on TV is actually a reflection of how we think of ourselves. And we are afraid. Look closely at the world and you will see lots of expressions of fear. Remember when I was a priest, we were going to christen the new carpet. And in order to do that, we invited the first grade to come in to christen the new carpet, to have this as their little moment. And the teachers prepared them by telling them that their sins were up on the board and they better memorize those sins. And most of all, it better be that nobody gets sick on that new carpet. And if you got sick on that new carpet, you just might go someplace that we would never ever want to go in our whole lives or even afterwards. Like hell. Well, those kids came into that new carpet just looking like little soldiers, going to their death. So I came out and I said, in the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, amen. And the one little boy in the front row says, Father, I'm sorry. And he puked all over the place. And little children, you know, they do what the other children do. And so all the children started to be sick. And the teachers had hymn books everywhere, catching their breakfast. It was terrible. It was amazing what fear can do. It's amazing what fear does. It makes a mess. So, How can we help take the fear out of the world? How can we make a fearless world in which we love freely and feel at home, where we are loved as well? We love, they love us. The primary commandment in making the world a better, less fearful place is to try never to make anyone feel guilty about themselves or ashamed of themselves. That's my big commandment. It's not don't kill. It's not don't steal. I mean, don't do those things either. It's not like this is, how can I get away with it, you know? But don't shame people. Don't make them feel bad about themselves. That's it. That's the big one. Let people know the good that they are doing rather than reminding them of the evil they're capable of. Now, television takes the bad in people and explores it, exaggerates it, and then dramatizes it. It's crazy. We usually try to live up to how we're treated and what we're told about ourselves. And we're often living down from who we are rather than up to who we really are. In other words, we live up to the image we have of ourselves, negative or positive. Like when I first became a priest, I realized that people expected me to be kind and gentle to them. And I was not a particularly kind and gentle person. I had a very quick wit. I had to tone that down. I had to almost lose it sometimes. I had to look people in the eye and see the light in those eyes. And then I started to treat them kindly. Because people are sweet, they're wonderful. And the only way I could get any time for myself was go into the church and pray. So I'd go into the church and I'd sit there and I'd daydream for a while and I'd look at the hymn books and things like that. But then I started to really pray. I started to do it and it helped. I don't think I've ever prayed a prayer that hasn't actually been answered. That's really a good way to operate. And I kind of learned that. But I learned it out of a kind of necessity. That people treated me as someone they expected to be praying, a little bit at least. You know, Father, you are a priest. You know, get a little of that in. Yeah. And so when people expected me to pray, I started praying, and I started having a bright vision of myself. In all of us is the entire universe. Kubler-Ross used to say, in all of us there is a Hitler. In everybody there's a Hitler. A Hitler. Hitler. What is that again? Hitler, yes. And I would say in all of us there's a Vladimir Putin. There's a devil in all of us. There's a really mean, I'll get you and make you feel like I felt and all that kind of stuff. There's that kind of person in us. But there's also a Nelson Mandela, a Maya Angelou. How we are treated and what we are told about ourselves goes a long way to determining the good we do or the evil we commit. There's a story about an African village. When a woman got pregnant, she would learn a song, or she would teach a song to her baby. And she would sing that song to that baby, just a song she made up. And all during her pregnancy, she would sing that song, and that baby would hear that. And she would teach it to everybody in the village. So whenever that child was troubled, or whenever that child was misbehaving, people, instead of saying, you're a bad little kid, or shut up, or go away, they sang the child a song. Isn't that a wonderful thing to do? I mean, that would bring peace to the world if we did that. If everybody had a song and people were willing to sing it to them. Now I have a little song. It's the simplest of songs, and you've probably heard it. But I thought we could kind of get started with this. I'm not much of a singer. You'll have to kind of pretend that I'm the reincarnation of Bob Dylan. Okay? He did okay. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. Isn't that a lovely song? You could, thank you. You don't have to be able to sing that song. Now, what if we brought that song to prisons, to hospitals, to schools, to places where the child was most distressed? We leaned in rather than leaned out. I remember being in a restaurant the other day, and a child was screaming, "Rah, rah, rah." And of course, everybody was starting to move around, kind of like, And finally, the child just got to screaming so much, everybody at the table, I looked over the table, and everybody was just leaning back, just like this. Oh. And the waitress came over and picked the child up and just held them, and the child kind of went to sleep on the waitress's shoulder there. So we need to lean in. We need to kind of say, you've got a song that needs singing. And when we can do that, we can say yes to wholeness and yes to the beautiful souls on this planet. Now, I want you right now to do a little experiment. I want you to kind of draw back into yourselves. I want you to close your eyes. Draw into yourself for a moment and be very still. I'll have a little of this spirits and get me started. Draw into yourself for a moment, be very still. I want you to call to mind that you have made it to right now. There were times in your life when you didn't think you'd make it to right now. When you thought you'd never be happy again, when you were so discouraged, when you were so hopeless or helpless, so cynical, thought you'd never make it. But now you made it, and you're relatively happy and whole and beautiful. The life ahead of you is eternal, and the worth within you is indisputable. Turn off the television for a moment and reimagine the world as a safe and secure place, full of kindness and possibilities and the laughter of children, where you often hear the phrase, "I know you so well, and I love you so much." I love you, I know you so well, and I love you so much. Thank you. Sometimes when you expect water, something much better occurs. Happy days are here again. Do 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 do.